What if I told you one man ruled Nigeria twice, once with a gun and later with votes? What if I told you this same man once slept on a cold prison floor, unsure if he would live or die? And what if I told you that prison did not break him, it prepared him? This is not fiction. This is not rumor. This is the story of Olusegun Obasanjo. But before power, before prison, before the presidency, he was just a boy no one expected anything from. So how did everything change? Let's go back. Way back, Nigeria was still under colonial rule. Life was hard. Dreams were limited. Obasanjo was born in Abeokuta. No rich family, no political godfather, no special advantage, just discipline, just ambition, just hunger. And here is the first question you must ask yourself. How does a poor boy rise in a country built on power and privilege? The answer was not politics. The answer was the military. In those days, the army was more than uniforms and guns. The army was opportunity. The army was education. The army was a ladder out of poverty. So Obasanjo joined. But here's the thing. He was not loud. He was not reckless. He did not show off. He watched. He listened. He learned. And slowly, people noticed. While others joked, he trained. While others relaxed, he studied. While others complained, he obeyed orders. And then something interesting happened. He started rising. Fast. Too fast. And this brings us to another question. When a man rises quickly in a system built on power, what does he attract first? Respect or enemies? In Obasanjo's case, he attracted both. Then came war. Not training, not drills. Real war. Nigeria was tearing itself apart. Brothers fighting brothers. Cities burning. Hope disappearing. And Obasanjo was sent into the fire. This was where men were exposed. Some froze. Some fled. Some failed. But Obasanjo did not break. He commanded. He decided. He survived. And war has a strange effect. It either destroys a man or forges him. When the war was ending, something happened. Something historic. Out of thousands of officers, he was chosen. Chosen to receive the enemy's surrender. Think about that. Why him? Why not someone else? Because power recognizes confidence, and confidence recognizes power. From that moment, Obasanjo was no longer invisible. Nigeria was watching. The military was watching. And when people start watching, mistakes become dangerous. After the war, Nigeria was unstable. Coups followed coups. Trust disappeared. Fear ruled the air. Soldiers were no longer just defending Nigeria. They were controlling it. And Obasanjo was now close to the center. Very close. Let me ask you this. When a soldier gets close to political power, can he ever walk away? Obasanjo didn't walk away, and destiny didn't allow it. He was now known, respected, feared. But power has a price. The higher you rise, the more dangerous the fall. And unknown to him, the same system lifting him up was already preparing to test him. Hard. A poor boy had become a powerful soldier. A disciplined officer had become a national figure. But one question remained unanswered. How did this soldier suddenly become the ruler of Nigeria? And even more importantly, how did power eventually lead him to prison? Power does not always ask for permission. Sometimes it knocks. Sometimes it breaks the door. And sometimes it points a gun and says, "It's your turn." That was Nigeria. The country was unstable. Leaders did not finish their terms. Trust was fragile. Fear ruled quietly. Inside the military, tension was rising. Whispers in corridors. Secret meetings at night. Names being mentioned, then erased. And one name kept coming back. Olusegun Obasanjo. Not because he was the loudest, but because he was trusted. And in times of chaos, trust becomes power. Then it happened. A coup. The government fell. Nigeria held its breath. And suddenly, Obasanjo was no longer just an officer. He was head of state. No election, no campaign, no celebration, just responsibility. Let me ask you something. What do you do when power lands in your hands without warning? Do you reject it, or do you accept destiny? Obasanjo accepted. He became a soldier president, calm, firm, disciplined. He spoke less, he acted more. And Nigeria watched closely. Would he rule like a dictator? Would he cling to power? Would he become just another military ruler? Because history had taught Nigerians one thing. Soldiers rarely give up power willingly. But Obasanjo surprised everyone. Instead of tightening his grip, he talked about transition. Instead of extending his rule, he spoke about civilians. People didn't believe him. They had heard promises before. So let me ask you, when a man with absolute power says he wants to leave, should you believe him? Nigeria waited and watched. Then he did the unthinkable. He handed over power, peacefully. No resistance, no bloodshed, no last-minute excuse. For the first time in Nigeria's history, a military ruler gave power to a civilian government. The world applauded. Nigeria exhaled. Obasanjo walked away. But here's the truth no one tells you. Walking away from power does not mean power walks away from you. Life after leadership was quiet, too quiet, and silence is dangerous. Because when a powerful man becomes quiet, people begin to question him. They begin to fear him. They begin to imagine things. Years passed. Then suddenly, his name returned to the headlines. Not for power, not for leadership, but for something darker. A shocking accusation. A charge that stunned the nation. Obasanjo was arrested, tried, convicted, sent to prison. Let that sink in. A former head of state, behind bars. So here is the question that changes everything. How did the man who gave up power end up in prison? Was he guilty? Was he set up? Was this revenge? And most importantly, would this prison cell be the end of his story or the beginning of something greater? Power is loud, prison is silent, and silence forces a man to face himself. No one believed it at first. A former head of state, in handcuffs? People laughed, people whispered, people panicked. Because if he could be arrested, who was safe? The accusation was heavy, serious, deadly. Treason, not corruption, not politics. Treason. The kind of charge that ends lives. The kind of charge that does not forgive history. And the name on every newspaper was the same. Olusegun Obasanjo. Let me ask you this. How does a man who once commanded soldiers suddenly become prisoner number one? The trial moved fast. Too fast. Witnesses appeared. Documents surfaced. Stories changed. Some believed he was guilty. Others believed it was revenge. Because in politics, yesterday's hero can become today's enemy. So here's the real question. Was this justice or fear disguised as law? Then the verdict came. Guilty, no long speech, no mercy. Prison, just like that. From State House to prison gate. From salutes to locked doors. From command to confinement. Inside prison, time moves differently. Days feel like years. Silence screams louder than crowds. No aides, no guards standing at attention. Just walls, cold walls. And thoughts. Endless thoughts. Imagine this. A man who once ruled millions. Now waiting for food like everyone else. A man who once gave orders. Now receiving them. So let me ask you, does prison humble a man or harden him? For Obasanjo, it did something else. It transformed him. In prison, he read, he reflected, he prayed, he wrote, and slowly, something changed. The soldier began to fade, the politician began to die, and a new man was being formed. Then something unexpected happened. The country changed, leadership changed, and suddenly, the prison doors opened. He was released, not quietly, not secretly, but officially. Nigeria watched again. The same man who went in disgraced, walked out calm, silent, different. But listen carefully. This is important. Prison did not end his story. Prison cleaned the slate. Because while others were busy fighting for power, Obasanjo was rebuilding himself, preparing, waiting. So here is the question that should keep you awake. How did a former military ruler and ex-prisoner return, not with a gun, but with votes? Nigeria had changed. The military was tired. The people were angry. The country wanted something different. something civilian, something stable, something new. But here's the problem. Every new politician felt old. So let me ask you, who do you trust when everyone has failed you? Then a familiar name returned, not from power, not from the army, but from silence. Olusegun Obasanjo, a former military ruler, a former prisoner. Two titles that should have ended his chances. But instead, they made him different. Think about it. He had ruled with a gun. He had suffered in prison. He knew power, and he knew pain. So when he spoke, people listened, not because they loved him, but because they trusted his scars. The politicians were nervous. Some laughed at the idea. How can an ex-soldier become a civilian president? How can a former prisoner lead a democracy? But Nigeria was desperate, and desperate nations take unexpected risks. Campaigns began. Crowds gathered. Questions followed him everywhere. Can we trust you? Have you changed? Will you abuse power again? And Obasanjo didn't shout. He didn't argue. He didn't promise heaven. He simply stood there, calm. And that calm was powerful. Let me ask you something important. Is experience more valuable than perfection? Nigeria seemed to think so. Election day arrived. Tension filled the air. Ballots replaced bullets. For the first time, the man who once ruled by force was waiting for votes, waiting for judgment, waiting for acceptance. Then the results came in, slowly, carefully, unbelievably. He won. Nigeria had chosen him, not as a soldier, not as a prisoner, but as president. History was rewritten. A man who once seized power now received it peacefully. A man once locked behind bars now walked into the presidential villa. So here's the question that matters most. Did power finally change him, or did it only change its form? Power returned, but this time, it did not arrive with guns. It arrived with cheers. The same man Nigeria once feared now stood as its elected leader. Olusegun Obasanjo was president again. But this was different, very different. This time, the uniform was gone. No military ranks, no command voice, no orders shouted, only expectations, millions of them. So let me ask you, is ruling with consent harder than ruling with force? Nigeria expected miracles, electricity, jobs, stability, hope. But democracy is slower than dictatorship, and patience is rare. Every decision was questioned. Every mistake was magnified. Every silence was criticized. Because when you are elected, you are never alone. Some praised him, others blamed him. Some called him a reformer, others called him stubborn. But one thing was clear. He was no longer just a man. He was a symbol of Nigeria's contradictions. He tried to reform the system, but the system fought back. Old habits resisted change. Old power structures refused to move. And here's a hard question. Can one man truly fix a nation? Or does the nation fix the man? Years passed. His presidency ended. Power moved on. But his name did not fade. Because legacy lasts longer than leadership. Today, people still argue about him. Was he a hero? Was he flawed? Was he misunderstood? Maybe the truth is simpler. He was human. A soldier who learned power. A prisoner who learned humility. A president who learned limits. So here is the final question, the one that matters most. Is a man defined by his rise, his fall, or his return? Because Obasanjo had all three, and Nigeria will never forget it. This was not just the story of one man, it was the story of power and what it does when it meets destiny.